Hello, beautiful ladies, and welcome back to another Wamen Hour, where I am joined tonight by a very special Wamen, Aydin Paladin. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Sorry, as soon as you said that let's get ready to go live, my mic stand decided to fall off. So sorry for some of the unusual noises if you heard them for a second. It just decided to fall off. It is the spooky season. It was possessed by a poltergeist, I assume. But thank you for having me on, Pep. Nice to talk to you.
Well, if you get attacked by more poltergeists, that'll make some brilliant YouTube streaming. We'll
For
get,
sure.
we'll surely go viral. Yeah, thanks for coming on. First thing I wanted to say to you before we tackle the topics and the news of today, Aydin Paladin. I've always had a theory that you must have named your channel after a D&D character. Is that correct?
No, it was actually I mean not far off. I play D&D like every week, so don't my husband is a DM by trade, so don't worry about that stuff. That's by far part of it. But no, I started playing Final Fantasy 11 when I was 11 years old. It was a Christmas gift. I was a small child. It really should not have been playing an online video game at that age, but things were a little bit different in 2001. It was all dial-up internet, for example. And I was sitting there with my dad making the character, and it had a random name generator. And Aiden came up, and I went, "That seems cool." I would later learn out that that is a, or learn out. I would later find out that that is a male name in all of the Arabic world, and it's definitely not a female name. But I've been going by it for 20 years, so it just kind of stuck. And I was originally a white mage, then I became and I was, when I was a very nervous person, I was a white mage as a nervous young adult teenager. When I got a little bit more self-confidence, I was a bard, and when I had a lot of self-confidence, I was a paladin. So that's all. That's the cute, I don't know if it's cute. That's the lame little story associated with the name.
Oh, I like it. No, did you know? People always tell me that Poe, my moniker online, is it's German for bottom. It's like a
Oh
slang
no.
word for a bum. So I always enjoy that. The German people, I don't have that many German viewers, and maybe that's why they just think I've got some kind of perverse channel about bottoms.
Yeah, perhaps.
Okay, so let's jump right into the news, because today Twitter has been just lighting up with a, what do you call it, a dumpster fire, fireworks. It's been exploding
Both.
with the news.
It has been exploding. Dumpster fire and fireworks, both accurate, I think.
Salt mining, that's
There
something
you
that we do
go.
on Twitter,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it
Yeah.
is. Some people very upset, some people very angry, and some people very upset, some people very happy.
It's like a battery, isn't it? When you have
Hmm.
like half of
Yeah.
everyone divided into two, you got half people extremely ecstatic and half of people devastated. It's like they just like feed into each other and like make the differences even more extreme. Where it's just that's where the power is generated from, is from the
It's a good allegory,
potential
yeah.
potential
Or
difference between
metaphor.
these two
Yeah.
feelings. Yeah, so Elon Musk has bought Twitter. That's the headline. But what I really enjoy, what really makes this so sweet, is that he's fired some people,
Yes.
and a lot of people have just left under unknown circumstances, either fired also, or they've quit because they don't want Elon Musk as their
All
boss.
of a sudden, their Twitter accounts aren't active anymore.
And we have this beautiful troll face that the BBC has put up as the banner image for this.
It's been curious too, because I've seen a lot of not so important people, as in like regular Twitter users, be like, "Well, I'm leaving now. Goodbye. I hope that you can deal without my presence." It's like, bye, Felicia. Like nobody cares. Where are you gonna go, by the way? Tumblr? Is that where you're gonna go back to Tumblr? Because I mean, what are your options? Oh, all of the social media alternatives that were made by conservatives because you kicked them off of Twitter. You're gonna go to Parlor. You're gonna go to Gab. Really? I don't think so. I think you're gonna. I guess if you go anywhere, back to Tumblr. It's about the only website that is extremely pro left, because they forced Twitter became the far left. Yeah, that was my response. Became the far left accepting website, and all the other new alternatives are more right leaning out of necessity. So.
Have you ever been on Twitter? Did you ever go through a phase?
I've been on Twitter.
No, sorry, on no, Tumblr. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, I've been on Twitter.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't part of the Tumblr. I think I was a little bit too old. Although I don't know, my best friend is older. Well, my former best friend is older than me, and she was way into it when she was like 27, and I didn't get that. So
I think I find Tumblr very interesting because I had a Tumblr account back in the day. But it
hmm
wasn't in its heyday. It's been sort of on the decline for a long time. A lot of
hmm
people leaving after censorship of nudity of all things.
porn
Um,
is that's the
yeah.
reason they went to Twitter is because of pornography.
Um,
That should be known.
but the thing that everyone always hates on Tumblr, and I can see why. But it had its own sort of ecosystem and culture that I actually did enjoy for a while. You know,
Mhm.
each kind of site has its own sort of sense of humor, and I kind
Oh,
of got into
absolutely.
that culture, and I kind of started to speak that language, and I really did enjoy it for a few years.
Oh, I love doing ethnographic data analyses on websites, interior social culture. That stuff is so much fun to me, but because it's just fascinating. You can do auto ethnographies like you're studying gorillas by going into Tumblr or some other social media website and just seeing how people collectively create their social identity. It's fascinating. Sorry, that's
That
my
is no,
really
that is.
nerdy way of looking at things.
Well, maybe that's a good introduction because you're much more famous than me on YouTube. But that said, there will be people watching this because it's my channel who don't know who you are. So maybe
Please don't say that. More
so maybe
famous than
talking
me on
about
YouTube.
your nerdy ethnographic research isn't such a bad introduction to. So what do you do? What's your
Well,
channel about?
thank you, but that famous on YouTube thing, I almost feel like is a slur. But sorry, I'm joking. Yeah, I do a YouTube channel where I predominantly cover the intersection of current events, some of them largely political, but not entirely, or social, with the social sciences, with a particular emphasis on media psychology and communication studies, which is my background. I have a undergraduate degree in communication studies with a minors in psychology, advertising, and marketing. I have a graduate degree in communication studies, emphasis media psychology. I was a PhD student in communication, emphasis media psychology, but I fucked that one up. And instead, I just came to YouTube to basically still do research without having all the, to say like without the pressures of doc school, but it's more stressful in its own ways.
I think you made the right choice. To be
I'm
honest.
happy. I'm all right with it. I'd still like to go back and finish it, but probably like online, like privately and quietly, you know?
Yeah, no, I think that's. I always have a kind of romantic idea that I could return to education, but I think my idea of like higher education is much more romantic than the the reality is. I don't know.
Oh, it can be romantic in its own ways. I still do love the academy, and that's actually one of the reasons that I am so passionate what I do is because I'm disgusted by what has happened to the academy and the sciences in particular to watch everything that I hold. I hate to use the word sacred because it's incorrect. To hold science sacred is to worship it, which is what we now find with this scientism across people all over the world who just worship science blindly. But it is the method that I do find almost sacred in terms of proper methodology is very, very important to maintain the scientific method. Obviously, it's kind of like in the words, right? But, um, I love proper good methods, good research, good data. I will come across a study and just be so happy to read data that contradict what I thought, what I expected. That's my favorite thing, which
Well, I
is
think it's
still
great.
lame.
I think it's great that there are people like you who just full time are doing YouTube, but you're also doing the legwork of research for people who honestly can't be bothered to do that kind of reading themselves to read around a subject into that kind of depth.
It's
Um,
bothering, and it is a skill. You do kind of have to be trained in it a little bit. It's not a talent. You're not born with understanding how to read advanced statistical outputs. You do have to have, and that's why like people will ask me, "Where's the data, Aiden? Show it to me." I'm like, okay, here's the output. Do you have any clue how to interpret what this says? I have videos out there explaining how to interpret what it says, but you're not going to listen to me because you're an angry person who is like trying to get a gotcha on me. But you can't read this. And when you do it, and when I see people, they're like, I found this part of it. Like, that doesn't mean what you think it means. Which has been the thing with this tweet that went semi viral, right? Is people getting very angry about the contentions that I made that I was shocked by, personally.
Should I put that on the screen so people can
Sure.
know what you're talking about? This is your latest claim to fame. I don't know what. So you make quite popular, well, quite successful videos, should I say, on YouTube. But
Some.
I'm guessing that this tweet thread, based on the number of likes, there must have been many more times the number of impressions. Is that like the Twitter version of views is called impressions, where you can see how many people have like scrolled past your.
I mean,
your tweet.
I've had tweets that have had this kind of pop off before, but this is amongst the most. And I really, so I spent a month and a half working on a video about the Queen's death and how people react to death. And it was one of the hardest videos I've ever made, because it wasn't just about that. It was about how people react to death of celebrities, people they have a parasocial relationship with in general. So like Michael Jackson, Dale Earnhardt, Prince, David Bowie, etc. And then his name's escaped me. The actor who played Hagrid had died while I was working on it, and it was very hard to work on because. And I have a whole section on Princess Diana's death because it was enormous in terms of the public reaction to it. It was really hard to work on that video because I have to watch videos of people crying. I have to read reports of people talking about how they wanted to die because somebody else died who they didn't know. It was really emotionally draining. This one about how leftists have a proclivity towards what appears to be fundamental evil is hard, but in a totally different way. It's more like, I better make sure that that's true, and that I'm reading that correctly, and that I'm not making a single error, because I don't want to disparage anyone, that is true. At the same time, one of the reasons that people get mad at this tweet, and about the data that are associated with it, which do exist, and which I have now posted a literature, of all the literature that I may be citing. I might not cite every single study on there because some of it may be more or less relevant. Every single study on there is relevant. If it's not in this tweet or even in this thread, it's somewhere in it because people started to scream at me. Oh, it's another tweet I made because I posted it because people were like, oh, "Where's the data, Aydin?" And I, like, even though, as I say in this tweet, I'm not done. I just been researching it, you know.
For people who haven't read it or are just listening, should I read the tweet or just sum it up?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So the psychology of the left is what you're talking about, the left of politics. As of the last 2 years of published analysis, can only be typified by envy, greed, hatred, and violence. Yeah. And this is based on published research of psychological differences.
I have nearly 10 studies that were published in the last 2 years that show that a proclivity towards redistribution of wealth, which is like I would call a core leftist belief, right?
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know anyone on the right who believes in redistribution of wealth.
Economically left and right, yeah.
Right. So this is an economic left belief. I do not know anyone on the right who believes in redistribution of wealth for the most part. Well, maybe some fascists, I suppose, but I don't know any of them. So generally the people on the right do not agree with redistribution of wealth. They're using it as a proxy variable for a very good reason, is because if you just measure leftism versus rightism, which is, by the way that every single study will measure those variables is using a liberal conservative scale. They use the word liberal in every single study. I think that's on purpose. These people are not liberal in my opinion, but I digress. Is that what we found in the last 2 years is that there is a consistent relationship across multiple studies between people who believe in redistribution, personal greed, not wanting to redistribute outside of themselves, hatred towards others, anger towards people who disagree with them, general just hatred and violence towards people who disagree with them, and an actual, they hate particularly the wealthy, and they do not want to redistribute outside of themselves when you truly get down into the hard tack data. And it was, I was shocked. Because I know people who are like hard leftists who do believe in redistribution, who this does not typify. And one thing to be aware of is that when we talk about statistical data, we're always talking about aggregates. We're talking about the average. We're not talking about any individual person ever. Of course, people read something like that and they freak out and think, "You're talking about me." No, I'm not. Okay.
Yeah, I think I when I first started reading into economics in particular, and a lot of my opinions about like economic redistribution, a lot of policies changed just as a basis of just from learning more about how economics works, about history. Mm-hmm. I started to move quite rapidly away from sort of redistributive ideas towards more free market stuff. And so from that point on, I had the assumption that left-wing economic ideas could only be as a result of ignorance. Like these people just simply do not understand economics, and that's why they're left-wing on economic issues.
They should read Thomas Sowell's Basic Economics.
Basically,
it's called that for a reason. It'll give you an idea of what's going on and why. And again, when you ask them, though, what they really want by redistribution, what the data show again and again is, I want to take from the rich and give to me.
Yeah. I think. I'm anticipating.
I'm not making it up. That's what they say when you ask them, and they think it's anonymous. It's just the truth.
Well, I'm really looking forward to you to your video on the subject coming up. Is this going to be the subject, or is this just like a subheading on a larger topic?
This will be it. Like one of the things that happened too is when I released my my list of all the studies. There's one of them that's about monkeys. And they're like, oh, Aiden's just going to talk about some monkeys, so stupid monkey studies. And you're like, well, the monkey study is actually about how apes are evolved towards communalism. And I wanted to show that as to why we, as a species, would also be prone towards communalism and sharing and charity. And then, I'm trying to show how the left is not insane by having communalist ideas. And they took that and went, Aiden's studying monkey studies. She has no idea what she's talking about. Like, wow, I throw you guys a bone. And this is what, every time, I literally throw you a bone to show how your beliefs are evolutionary. And you go, fuck you. Not going to watch that monkey study. Okay, cool, great.
At least Joe Rogan's going to like your video, though, huh?
Oh, Joe Rogan, no, he hates monkeys. What? He hates monkeys. He's afraid of them. He wants to fight him or something.
But he loves talking about them. Like, I remember
talk about them. Yes, he will like the talk about the monkeys, I suppose.
Yeah, I can't remember what interview I was watching with him where someone he's just like sitting back in his like he's doing like, oh yeah, what do you think about that? Like Jamie pulled that up, and then like the person he's talking to like just says something about chimps, and he's like, chimps. Now let me tell you about those guys.
You've activated Joe Rogan's chimp detector.
So
yeah,
funny.
He's weirdly obsessed with monkeys. It's bizarre.
I love that about him.
Me too. But yeah, like, look, if we're trying to figure out the evolutionary proclivities of humans, we have to look at how capuchin monkeys, in particular in this instance that I was talking about, were capuchin apes. There's a bunch of studies on it. You can go watch, TED Talks on this exact study, or a series of studies. But all of a sudden, when I say it, it must be because I'm calling people on the left chimps, instead of saying, actually, I'm saying that your ideas about redistribution of wealth have an evolutionary basis and rationale. This was for your benefit, and you still acted hateful and violent and with extreme animus towards me in regards to a piece of research that was in the reference list I put there for your benefit. You really... And people in Twitter, one of the reasons this popped up is because people watched that happen live on Twitter. They watched me being like, the leftists screaming about this and being extremely hateful. Like, I got one tweet that was just like, fuck you, bitch, I'm gonna fucking kill you, fuck you, kill yourself, like this, all that kind of stuff. In response to me saying that there's evidence that the left is violent and angry. Oh, gee. I mean, thanks for proving my point, I guess.
I suppose you're going to bring up Jonathan Haidt's research. It is a very popular book, The Righteous Mind, talking about how the left are more they're exemplified by care and harm prevention being their core morals. But this seems to go against that.
No, it doesn't. Actually, no. One thing, I've never read Jonathan Haidt's book. I've read all of Jonathan Haidt's research. I don't, because his book is like pop psych. No offense, please read Jonathan Haidt's book. But when I go into this, I want numbers, I want facts, I want data. I don't want your description of things, frankly.
Great.
And which is not bad. Like, I like Jonathan Haidt quite a lot. He's a very cool guy. He's a very intelligent scholar. Haidt, Graham, and Nozick's research, though, on the moral foundations theory finds this consistently, is that the left is typified by two moral foundations or intuitions, which are harm versus care, which is avoiding harm and promoting care, and an idea of fairness. Now, the idea of fairness is perceived fairness. It is not universal fairness. It's not what everyone would call fairness. It is perceived fairness. The right is typified by three moral intuitions, which is loyalty, authority, and purity. And what those mean is that it's respect for authority. It is a in group of some sort, but there's some confusing data there on the left. But what it means is that if you were to ask them about authority, or to me, preference for in group of other leftists, it's going to be probably moderately high. But the second you go like preference for your nation, preference for people who live in the same town as you, they don't give a shit comparatively. Sorry about the crotch rocket. And then the third one is purity, which is also called moral disgust, which is, being sickened by things like transgender strip shows for children. Those are the three. Those are called the binding foundations. Those are the conservative foundations, and then the other two, the Care Foundation and the Fairness Foundation, are what are called the individualizing foundations, and those are the two left foundations. There is a sixth foundation that is liberty, and it only really exists in libertarians. I mean, everyone has a degree of respect for liberty, but libertarians don't give a damn about any other foundation besides liberty. It's the only one that they are really activated in response to it. So yes, I will be studying a great deal of Haidt's research as kind of an introduction, but then we're going to get into more recent and more in-depth data about the exact differences between left versus right and moral intuitions, moral functioning, and how the left is kind of evil when it comes to wanting things and being greedy. And wanting to hurt people, actually, as well.
Yeah, well, I'd love to have you back on for after you do that video, because there's so
sorry,
much
I'm trying
there.
to speed through it.
No, it's brilliant. There's so much there that I want to talk about, but that's not the name of this episode. We're already like almost halfway through, and I really want to get to your last bit. No, it's all brilliant, and I really hope you can come back if you have a good time tonight.
Anytime. Yeah, thanks for having me so much.
Thanks.
I'm sorry if I'm talking too much. I think I told you before, I'm a little bit hyped because I'm been doing stuff. I'm trying to go. I just got all my flights ready to go to America, which I haven't seen my parents in like almost 3 years. So I'm a little bit high energy.
Before we do get into the meat of today's episode, I want to read a super chat for you for $5 from DRT is King, who was the patron of this week's topic, who got you on. Very kind of him to go and prod you and then also prod me together to like talk to each other. Happy to have you here. Awesome. For a small question, what is your favorite dinosaur, Aydin?
Oh, I think Brontosaurus.
Is it a Brontosaurus or a Diplodocus? Because I know there's an ongoing debate.
That's the sea one, the water one with the fins, right?
I don't know.
Not Diplodocus. That's not. That's not correct. It's a different one. Brontosaurus is the one with the big long. I like the big long neck ones. I like the ones in the sea too. I like the big long neck ones. I think they're cool.
Like a Lapras Pokemon. I don't really know. Brontosaurus is just so huge. It's like one of the biggest dinosaurs, right? Like the length of it.
Enormous. Yeah, they're huge. Giant ancient elephants, essentially.
And I know they could stand up as well. Apparently they stood up.
Even the tops of the tallest trees, because of course the trees evolved to even try to get outside of the reach of their necks, and so they just learned how to stand up essentially, so they could get even up higher. And then a meteor fell and they all died. But
I know. I just have to bring this up. Completely off topic. My favorite dinosaur, I'm going to say, is it Archaeopteryx? Is that big bird skeleton that was
they're really cool,
preserved like this? The thing about
awesome.
There's a rant that Dan Harmon went on like several times on his Harmontown podcast about giraffes, but also it applies to Brontosaurus as well. That it's so funny the way that animals evolve. Like when you look back on an animal's evolution, a species, it can seem like it's sort of just tunnel vision. Like the giraffe is just like taller necks. This is the way forward. Like, get a taller neck, you will get more food. And they just get taller and taller and taller, while like humans are over here getting ever and ever smarter and like developing silicon chips and
selective evolution is what and how you decide. Well, you don't decide. There's well, if you believe in God as I do, then maybe there's some hand of the Almighty involved. But how a species is able to compete, right? So for the giraffe, for example, they decided we're going to grow really dang long necks so we can get up to the leaves that other animals aren't able to reach. For humans, we developed tools. We developed a big brain. And a large part of that was part of walking upright, which allows greater blood flow to the brain. So
Really?
upright walking is a huge part of it. Yep.
Interesting. Well, that's. I guess is that a good segue? I don't know the way that now
Big brain ape.
the
We're back
tools
to
that
the
we
chimp
develop,
thing.
they
Yeah.
started off as being physical, things, and now a lot of the tools that we create for ourselves are, things like the internet and democracy and,
Yeah.
things that are highly conceptual now,
Yes.
that we need extremely abstract brains in order to really think about and to make them work to our advantage. And is that it? Maybe that's a good segue to talking about your video, the girl box. I kept saying box, the girl boss
Well,
paradox.
that is an impolite word for the female reproductive area, I suppose. The girl
Would
box.
you yes? Would you like to introduce that video that you made? It's doing very well, so congratulations. I looked
Yeah,
up
that
what
one
the
popped
most
off
popular
a little
videos
bit.
on your channel are.
I was surprised by that, but also not surprised because the videos on my channel that have really popped off, it's that one and the video I made about understanding the Karen mindset. Those are like the two most popular videos I've ever made. People seem very interested in, I guess, in hearing a woman talk shit about other women. I guess that's the
Welcome to Women's Hour.
right? Which is, it really isn't the point. It's more to explain a phenomenon, the Karen phenomenon, which is, I can't even remember what the data I went into as to how I explained that. There were data on it. It's been 4 years or 3 years, and I don't remember.
Wow.
The girl boss stuff though is very interesting because in every society where women have been given more and more rights, women consistently report lower and lower happiness and life satisfaction in every single society. In fact, you can find it in Switzerland. There was a specific study that followed longitudinally in the late 70s or early 80s, I believe. Even though there was already a law against unequal pay for women, it was already in place. They passed a new law that was like, if you do it, you're going to be an extra double secret probation. You really can't pay women unequally. Women continued to make less than men, despite this law that made it super duper illegal. It was already illegal, like I said. And yet, women's happiness declined in the cities as their numbers of hours went up. Women's happiness and their marriage rates and their rates of children that they had went down. The happiness of women in the rural areas, where they were not as supportive of this particular bill, because again, they followed voting for the bill over the course of about 20 years, which is a really fascinating study, again, in Switzerland. And the women who voted for the bill were more and more miserable. They were less likely to get married. They were more likely to work way more hours, less likely to have children. The women in the rural areas were more likely to get married, women who largely did not vote for this bill, more likely to be married, more likely to have children, and their happiness rates were significantly higher. Their life satisfaction rates, because those are two different things. You can be satisfied and not happy. That sounds contradictory, but it's not. Because happiness is something, using the Greek terms, which is probably more, I like using the Greek terms because they're more apt.
Eudaimonia?
Yes, is that English it doesn't really have these words. So, hedonia is pleasure, or hedonic pleasure, hedonic enjoyment, that's happiness. And then the other term, of course, is eudaimonia, which is also defined as meaningfulness. And that's what I would call life satisfaction in the measures that we have, that we're measuring something reliably, but how do we describe what it is? I would call life satisfaction a measure of eudaimonia. And I also had a study on eudaimonia specifically in there, which most people don't use that term. I wish more scientists use the term because it's more precise.
How do you measure it? Sorry, I don't think you might have gone over it in the video, but I don't remember. So how do you measure eudaimonia?
Well, eudaimonia is going to be like, we're going to ask questions in your native language of how satisfied do you feel? Do you feel that your basic question as to how you define it? Like, I can't define words for participants. They have to define them for themselves to a certain degree.
Yeah.
How satisfied with life? Could you die happy tomorrow? That kind of stuff. Like, if you didn't have if you had a serious problem in your life that would cause you to lose money, would you still be satisfied? Getting rid of the hedonic aspects of pleasure, money, partying, access to goods, but things that are outside of that, outside of the physical, that are the metaphysical. That's eudaimonia rather than hedonia.
Interesting. I really was interested in your video. I don't. I'm highly skeptical of a lot of data collected about self-reported life satisfaction and
Sure.
And happiness, whether it's eudaimonia or hedonia. And I was
Me too.
happy to talk to you about this. Not because I disagree with you, but I wondered if things like that. Whether you know more about this than I do, I think.
Sure.
So I read a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, which is a big pop sci book.
Yeah.
Which I had has a big problems with about how they. Or maybe I'm thinking of Nudge actually. I read these two books at the same time. Nudge, another big pop sci book. And the way they measured happiness in that was something that sounds very smart, but when I that I actually disagree with a lot. And he brings up all of these reasons for why self-reported happiness is a problem, because people, what are you comparing it to? Like, you're comparing how happy you were yesterday to today, or like last week to today, or someone else to yourself.
Typically, yes. One of the ways that we can deal with, there are a lot of operational problems with measuring something like happiness that is inherently based on self-report. There is no objective measure of happiness because it's based on how you feel relative to others, maybe, but all we can do is try to operationalize it into such a way that we can try to get a normative position. There is also a problem with surveying bias. People want to say they're happier than they really are because they want to give off a
cope.
What Goffman calls face work, of portraying the positive face, of not making it. Some people will want to do the opposite, though. Also, they'll want to make it look like their life is miserable.
Well, exactly. Like, how much is just your personality of liking to complain rather than liking to brag?
Well, that's why you need to have a large enough sample size so that we can adjust for and account for extreme outliers within the data set. And in fact, if you have some extreme outlier and they're like, I'm a 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 on all levels of happiness. And in fact, you put in the instruments something called a reverse coded question. So if they've gone through just answered 10, 10, 10.
Yeah.
And then they have an answer that's actually about like, how depressed are you? And they go 10. We can just
take it out.
Take those data out because it shows the person wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
To the study.
That's clever.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that clever. It's the basic way you can try to deal with problems.
Well, this clever workaround that they had in Nudge was that they asked people how long they spend in a day. They actually got them to take a schedule, I think, of how they spent a day. Yeah. And they asked them the activities that you were doing in this hour, in this hour, in this hour, were these activities that you would rather stop doing if given the chance. So these were measured to be like, activities you don't like is an activity that you'd rather stop doing. Right. An activity you like doing, like playing video games, is like, yes, please, I'd like to play more video games. Like, if I was given the option to stop doing this, I would stop. Which is more scientific than, I think, self-report, but it also, I think, really doesn't cover the wide spectrum of, like, human emotions. It
is in of itself still self-report in its own way. Yes. And again, you can't get around this. There is no. I can't measure the activation in someone's brain to see, like, are the positive centers of the brain activated. I can measure hormone levels to see, how much positive hormones do you have in your system. These are ways that we can get outside of that, but the reality is when we're looking at mass level data, which is the best way to measure this kind of stuff, outside of doing, if I'm trying to measure hormones, I'm going to have a survey sample size of about 30 people on average. It's really hard to get more people than that for a longitudinal, where they have to come in every day and have their hormone levels checked. That's one, very expensive to conduct. Two, you're going to have a whole lot of attrition. People will drop out because they'll get bored. They don't care. Instead, what we can do is I will send you a survey and pay you $50 once a year, every year, to answer it. That's way easier and way cheaper. So that's what the majority of the data are going to be, are these longitudinal, non-experimental surveys. So, yeah. Is it self-report? Absolutely. But how else can I ask you if you're happy or figure out if you're happy unless I'm going into the lab and actually measuring hormones. It's pretty much impossible.
Well, here's an outrageous idea. I think forget about people's happiness. I don't care. Like I'm beyond caring because
Yeah, true.
when I really look at it, it seems like I'd rather just say I'd rather just make a bold pronouncement like women are happy when they have more children. That's just my value. That's my own personal bias.
Sure.
And I'll just put that onto women and say, okay, well, you're not having babies. I'm gonna infer that you're not happy, even if you've been, drinking mojitos and sitting on a beach and you love your life and you have a really sexy husband.
Yeah. Not what the
I
data
still
show,
don't care because I'm still going to call you unhappy because you're unhappy according to my worldview.
Right, but I had such a hypothesis, and I went and said, is there empirical evidence for that hypothesis? And yes, there is extensive, going back for 60 years, evidence of that hypothesis being accurate, which is that the women who go and drink the mojitos on the beach, they say they're very happy, but then they go home and cry into their pillows. The women who have to deal with a crying, screaming toddler all day will be like, I'm not super happy, but they are very satisfied with their lives. And when, like, their happiness too, with young moms in particular, like the first 6 months, real happy, which is like well, there's a little bit of mix up there because postpartum is going to play a role. Like the first year, I would say, very, very happy. Terrible twos come in, not so happy. Then the happiness from like about age 7 forward, the happiness is complete for the rest of the life. The rest of the life of that woman after the child, her first child, because after the second child, it's easier. The data seem to show there's less of a deleterious effect of happiness after birth and into the twos because they've dealt with it once, presumably. At least I would assume that's why. And women who have had children are happier for the rest of their lives than women who have not. Those data are consistent, persistent, and basically unshakable.
Yeah, but if you apply this nudge mindset, I don't know what that exact methodology is called, where you ask people to report their activities in a day to infer their happiness. But if you apply
journaling,
sure. Yeah. If you apply that to motherhood, you'd get a pretty poor outlook because you spend like hours and hours rocking a baby to sleep, breastfeeding. There's some time playing and sort of bonding that's really enjoyable, but there's a lot of this other stuff where it's really difficult and not really fun, and you'd kind of rather stop doing it. You'd rather like have a rest and go to sleep and have a shower. But it's not like those things are really awful either. It's just that they're, it's really hard to describe it, right? Because it's doing really important work.
In so many of the mothers who were surveyed across the data I looked at, when they were asked, this is a difficult, annoying job, but would you rather go back to your desk job? Like 75% said no. They want to stay being full-time moms. Because you're going to do your desk job. You sit at your desk and answer emails all day. Like, is that, again, I'm not a mom. I'd like to be, but, I can only imagine, therefore, my mom teaches very young children between the ages of like 3 and 4. So she loves dealing with the little kids, and that's rough for me. But for her, she loves it. That's her whole, that's her thing. She it doesn't bother her at all. Changing diapers. Well, at 3 and 4, they shouldn't have diapers. She's wiping dirty butts, which happens, accidents happen. That doesn't bother her. It's just, she has no, she doesn't have to discuss kind of like, which I would, I guess if you're there, if you're their mom, you're like, I know it must be different, right? I mean, like, whatever. I've not been through that, so I don't know. But the hard parts, what it seems to be in the data, is that the hard parts produce so much reward in the long run that it's worth the difficult parts. Whereas if you have someone who's sitting at an office job answering emails all day, what's the ultimate reward? Where's the eudaimonia out of that? There's no meaningfulness that people can drive from that in the way that they can from raising a child and watch them grow into an adult, into a person.
Yeah, I think women in particular, and just people in general, have this, when you're a young person sort of anticipating what your life is going to be like, you have expectations that your job is going to be more fulfilling than it in most cases ends up being, where people don't imagine themselves sitting, doing an office job. They think, oh, I'm going to be a reporter. I'm going to be a doctor, a scientist. The work I do is going to matter, and it's going to be really interesting and fulfilling. And I actually ended up doing one of those jobs where, I've gone back to work now after maternity leave, and I work as a design engineer. So I have what could be broadly, a lot of people would agree, it's in a field that I'm interested in. I'm well educated in that subject. I'm quite good at it, if I do say so myself. And it is very interesting and varied work. It's not just writing emails. I actually do get to design things and test them and build them. Which is really cool, and I still prefer being, I still prefer rocking a 2-year-old to sleep. It's
yeah. It has an existential, beyond our physical form value, right? Something that's beyond monetary. That is, because we all are endowed with the knowledge that we will die. It's called mortality salience. And knowing that you've created new life has this value that is so important and intrinsic to the survival of our species. Obviously, that's why we're endowed with that amazing feeling. Because otherwise, it would suck too much for anyone to do it, right? The hard times would be too hard. But when you get to see your child learn and grow, these are the things that make, as far as the data can show it, and you've lived it and I have not, Poe, so you'd have to say, that make the shitty times worth the good times of seeing the outcome of your efforts rather than answering emails in an office all day.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, even in my job, I actually do get to, it's weird because I do get all of that as well. In a sense, it's not quite as good as, making a human being, making a machine or something, but, it still is rewarding. I guess I don't know. I have a theory that I'd like to present to you as to what, this is my solution to the paradox. So I want to see what you think about this. I think that women in general, but I suppose sort of modern women post-feminism, it's wired into women to admire men and to look at men's achievements and think, wow, isn't that amazing? Like, that man did that. As part of like a mate selection thing. Like, we're wired to be impressed by men's achievements. In a way that men aren't really for women's achievements or are, the
yes,
amazing...
Yes, in the data, definitively. Men do not care at all.
So I think what happens is to use the word wiring again, to follow on that metaphor, it's a kind of case of crossed wires where women admire men's achievements as, reporters, scientists, doctors, lawyers, whatever. They think, like, they're impressed by all of these things. And then if you let them, they'll get so impressed by it that they'll want to do it themselves, which is like, no, you're supposed to want to marry that guy. You're supposed to want his babies. Like, you're not supposed to be him. But over and over again, I've seen women kind of confuse this. I've seen it with myself most of all, where I can actually look at those times and think about how I was kind of embarrassed to be that impressed by a guy, and I was like, okay, I guess I have to admire him. Like, I want to do what he's doing and to get that achievement myself. When really it was probably just misplaced sexual attraction. What do you think?
That's a very interesting hypothesis I hadn't really considered. I don't know the answer to that. I don't have any data on that, so I
love that. You're so thorough that you're not like me, just like popping off theories. You're like, okay, well, that hasn't been studied, so I don't know.
It might have been, but I haven't seen the data on that. But my guess, based on what I have read, I probably have read something on it at some point, but sometimes it gets locked in the vault, My guess would be, it's probably, like you said, some of it is maybe not envy, but mimicry of, oh, the man is doing this, so I should do a similar thing. And if I want to attract a man that I find attractive, I should be doing things similar to him so that I am more attracted to him because I'm in the same area or something like that. That I could totally see. Also, women just have their own agency. We do have our own desires and interests. This is the problem.
Come on.
I know. When you study stuff like this, it sounds like I'm truncating down men and women into just, they are in these boxes, and if they fall outside of them, there's something wrong. No, these are general trends. They do not refer to anyone in particular. But of course, women have their own desires. And I think when you brought up about your particular field, you said there's an aspect of finishing projects. And there can still be a whole bunch of psychological and emotional reward for women in jobs. Obviously, it's not only child rearing and not that makes women happy, that is reductive. But it does tend to be the same kinds of things. Finishing a big project, creating something. We find women in so many creative jobs for this reason. Of women are creators. Not all. Some women are very technical, but women are more prone towards creation of things and the finishing of a project. I know that's how I feel. I'm like, oh, here's my finished project. Oh, it's like the best feeling. I have this like extreme release of excitement, energy for about 24 hours, and then I go, all right, time to go back to start the next project, which would be bad if I was that way with children. Just saying, but yeah, it's just a different. It is absolutely nothing within the data I've ever seen that shows that kind of thing is different in terms of wanting to create, wanting to do work. Women absolutely do want to work. It's just what is the most fulfilling job for women, and longitudinally, women who don't have children just seem to be way less happy. Like there's a point when they're like 60 where the happiness goes up a little bit, but then it goes back down again at like 70. And I think that's like a cope region, I think is what I call it. That's like yeah, I don't need any kids. I'm so glad. I'm enjoying my 60s, having wine on the beach. Then it's like, and then you're 70, and you're alone, and that is appears to be the consistent case. But yeah, I think both are probably correct, and I was interested by your personal example.
There's someone, people in the chat calling me Freudian, which I think is fair. Just to misplace a sexual impulse into another desire is a very Freudian kind of theory. But
Freud was an idiot. And sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Just saying.
Yeah, no, but I mean, don't psychologists it's like baby bathwater syndrome? Like didn't he discover the unconscious, which is still a very valid concept that we still use at the moment.
It's called, what we call it is cognitive, paracognitive, precognitive, which is precognitive is before you thought about it. Paracognitive means you didn't really think about it. That's the subconscious. And then there's the actual cognitive, which is active thoughts. Of course, we found out a couple of years ago that there are certain people who don't have inner monologues whatsoever, which is horrifying. But
another one of your videos, yeah.
Yep, did a video on that one as well. That study also, I was like, no, you must be getting something wrong. It's like, only a little bit, but...
But aren't they... okay, correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a while since I watched your video.
Yeah, it's
while that was still a meme, but just to quickly touch on that. I thought it was just that they still have an unconscious or a subconscious, they're just not... they're just not verbal. They're not as verbal, so they're not verbalizing it.
Yes, that is they don't have an inner voice. They are thinking about stuff, but I don't know about you, but when I'm thinking about things, I'm talking inside my head. I'm hearing myself talk to myself. Maybe that's not schizophrenia. I mean, it might be, it may be undiagnosed, but that is apparently not all people. Some people think about things that have no internal monologue. For me personally, I have an internal monologue that is just going 24 hours a day, narrating crap. But that's not all people. The same thing with the other thing was the ability to see objects in the head, in your mind's eye. And there are some people who you ask them to envision an apple, they can't see anything. They're like, what do you mean envision it? No, they just can't. They just can't. Yeah. No relationship to intelligence, by the way, as far as we can tell, to IQ. Just some people do not have this evolved capacity to envision an apple.
You know what I find, on another tangent, but what I find really interesting about that question is that I don't know if that's a genuine phenomenon or if people just report differently. For instance, if I ask you, think of Sonic the Hedgehog, what do you think, oh yeah, Sonic, he's so clear, I can see him right here in my head. And then I say, does Sonic have blue arms or beige arms?
Oh, no, Chris Chan's going to get upset.
This is a random example I thought of. But if you see
particular study,
if you think if I ask you, does Sonic wear gloves? Does Sonic wear socks? You know, is Sonic has like one huge eye that joins in the middle. But if I asked most people to draw Sonic, they would probably draw him with two. You know, they'd say yes, I know exactly what Sonic looks like.
Yeah.
But then if you ask them to draw it, they get it completely wrong because it's just that they think that they know what Sonic the Hedgehog looks like, but actually it's just it's such a weird character design. I always think about it when I look at Sonic. He looks so weird.
Right, that's why they use a simple object like an apple. And what they basically found in that particular study, the citation is escaping me, but trust me, you can go find this. An apple is an object everyone is aware of who was being studied. Okay, everyone knows what an apple looks like. What they asked them to do is, can you envision it in your mind's eye? When you close your eyes, can you see an apple? And if you try to see it, what do you see? And then whatever you see, can you rotate it? Can you turn it upside down in your mind's eye? Can you make it bigger or smaller? These were the questions that were asked. Is it in color? These were all the questions that were asked. And they found that there was a gradient of people, people who just could not. They were like, what do you mean? They literally couldn't understand, which might be a problem with the operationalization. That might be a problem with that could have been it. But they just said, they literally couldn't even understand the question. What do you mean? See an apple? What do you mean? Which again is confusing to people who can. But even when it's explained in detail and can you see the apple? Can you rotate it? What color is it? What size is it? They couldn't even. What do you mean? Yeah, see something when my eyes are closed.
But if you ask those people, is an apple more round or is it more square? They know that it's round. Like they remember what like the features of an apple are. So they've got like some kind. Even if it's not a mental image, they know about apples. If that makes sense.
It's about imagination, I guess, or this is mental visualization in this case. And then you had some people who were like, I can see it, but it's just a flat gray shape. Then you had some people who said, I can see it, it's colored, but it's flat. It's a colored image, but it's flat, like a PNG or whatever. Some people said, I can see it, but it's in color and I can rotate it a little. And then you have people at the far end who are like, yeah, I can see it. It's an extreme HD 4K detail.
That's me.
Me too. So to turn it around and all that stuff. But yeah, I don't know why. I don't think any scholars even proposed a good example or reason as to why there are people who see a gray apple shape or people who see nothing. Why I made a video about that was because I was irritated by some of that research being used as proof of like that people are empty-headed blank slates, tabula rasas. That's not what these researchers have been indicative of. So that's the other thing is that don't take research and use it to prove some weird point about NPCs. Maybe they exist, but these data are not indicative or proof of it. I called the video proof of NPCs just for clickbait reasons.
Well, I believe in NPCs, but I don't believe it has anything to do with the internal monologue. I think I've become so disenchanted with most people's ability. I love people. Like I love talking to them. I think they're really interesting. But it's like especially things like politics and things that they'll just like whatever information lands in front of their eyes on Facebook or on the news. It is like NPC programming where they're like, okay, that's true. That's all. They don't have any curiosity about it. They don't have any analysis of it. They'll go, okay, I guess that's true then. Cool.
That's a whole gigantic can of worms as to why that happens. That's more social identity. That's cognitive biases. That's a whole big can of worms as to why that happens. Of deferring towards authority figures, meaning, oh, I saw it on the news, therefore it must be true. That's
or
totally
what they already want to believe, or that they think they confirm things they already believe.
Oh yes, believing things you already want to believe. It's a whole that's. I will cover that in the video about the left versus right stuff.
That would be great.
But that's an enormous topic.
We do have another super chat from Tune In Dropout for $20. Thank you so much. This is back when we were talking about was it the 6 Merrill foundations?
Yes.
Saying, how did these 6 traits metastasize into such a dysfunctional system? I actually don't know what this question refers to. Do you get it?
Yes, he's asking about the 6 moral foundations, which, and I can tell you how they metastasize. It's when you only fall into binding or individualizing foundations. The left, and the reason why the left has become so incredibly toxic, I would say, using their verbiage, by the way, is that they only have concern for these two intuitions, avoiding harm, but I have the data on this. They only care about avoiding harm in outgroups. That means people who do not look like them, people who are not from the same nation as them, and people who are, well, unless they're people who disagree with them politically, in which case they want to cause harm. So you find a really weird problem with the harm foundation there. Is that harm versus care, I should say, foundation, is that they are very, very interested in protecting people that they are not involved with. They want to protect other people. They only up to a certain point. Once they're kind of out of the picture, they don't really care anymore. But they very much want to be seen as being caring.
Yeah.
The Fairness Foundation is less of an egregious one. The Fairness Foundation is, I don't want people to be treated unfairly. But again, when you start to ask them about what if it's someone from an outgroup that you hate, a conservative? Well, they don't ask those questions. They said a member of the KKK are the kinds of questions they get asked. A member of the KKK, a Nazi, and they go, kill him.
Yeah.
And you'll be like, oh,
absolutely.
I'm the most caring, fair person ever. It's like, what if it's a Nazi? I want them to be dead. And the metastasization of that is that you can find what seem to be the most pro-social traits be extremely, extremely deleterious and harmful when they are separated into in-group, out-group orientation, which is what we see on the left.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically my my latest idea of moral foundations theory, is that it seems to have some explanatory power. Yeah, it seemed really true when I was reading it. Like all the examples, it seemed to explain so much of what I was seeing with debates and online discussion. But then I guess lately I've become more cynical, where it does just seem like, that I was going to write a video about it. It's not hypocrisy, it's hierarchy. Yes. Where really all of these moral foundations come down to thing I like being attacked, thing I like being promoted. You know, it just comes down to like personal, not even values, because that makes it sound like they have principles.
Allegiance. But
it is just out group and in group is the only. You know, people I like are saying this, so it's true. People I don't like are saying this is not true, and I'll just come up with whatever reasons I need to make that the case.
100%, Poe. The in-group, out-group stuff is Toshwell, Turner, Hogg, and Oakes, 1971, but also, or 76, excuse me, 76. But all of the work from anyone you reading Henri Toshfell, along with any work that you see along with his name from Turner, Hogg, and Oakes, is social identity theory research, the seminal social identity theory research. I can't name one study because it's about 15 of them, okay? But it finds what you said is that people are more like, oh, it's me. It's about my group. We're the good ones. However, social identity theory is like that. But the moral foundations actually is not like that. In that people really get convinced that they are good, that they are better than others, and on both sides. And that they will side with these things not just because they like what the person is saying or they think it's agreeable, because it gives them a personal increased valuation of the self. You are a good person because you went along with these beliefs. And that can include causing extreme, severe, and incomprehensible harm as long as you think that you will get a social identity reward as a part of your following your moral foundation. That's where you get, that's how you get the Holocaust, right? You know, that's how you get death camps. That's how you get fascism. That's how you get extreme communist beliefs. That's how you get any form of totalitarianism, is from a belief that you are doing good.
Yeah, I think, I've come all the way back around to thinking that maybe, Spock from Star Trek, you know, like the most rational, logical people, basically the people who don't care what other people think about them are the only ones who are capable of making good calls on, like, good judgments, because they're the only ones who aren't trying to appeal to what is the majority belief, what is the popular belief.
That's why I like Mencius Moldbug. That's why I like Mencius Moldbug, because he doesn't give a shit, you know? Yeah.
Okay, just we did get another super chat here from Tune In Dropout, following up from the last thing he said. What role does social media play in this effect regarding your last
I'll run through it real quick to the fast mic. I know we're running out of time. So real quick. Okay, social media has a couple of effects. The main and most important one is de-individuation. That's Zimbardo in 1971, 1969. Those are the two primary citations. Psychological disinhibition, or de-individuation, is a lack of the personal self-identity in an anonymous or pseudo-anonymous environment. This has two potential outcomes: toxic disinhibition or benign disinhibition. Toxic disinhibition is typified by online bullying or being a piece of shit on the internet. Benign disinhibition is when you see someone else online or in another pseudo-anonymous environment, and they're having an emotional outpouring, and you also feel positive emotions or maybe negative emotions, but not aggressive ones. Like sadness, you're crying with somebody else. That's benign disinhibition. It's also called the strangers on a train effect. There's also something called Walther's hyperpersonal model, which is 1996, Walther 1996, which is that people develop very, very quick relationships with each other on the internet because there is no such thing as a you're both playing roles, even if we're not intending to. We're putting on faces, which is Goffman's face work, 1958. 51 maybe. Whoops. I forgot Goffman's face work original citation on that. Irving Goffman's on face work. You're putting on the most positive face, and when you're showing a positive face back and forth, people will develop a very, very quick relationship with each other online, faster than they would interpersonally in face-to-face communication context, because there is not this blockage of social norms and mores that we must follow. The reaction of that also is that people get really, really close to people and feel very close to people, which goes us into parasocial relationships. People feel like they know other people online that they don't fucking know at all. And the ultimate result is that people can both be the biggest assholes on the internet and the nicest, most kind and loving people imaginable. This is the basic function of internet communication.
Well, thanks for that.
Sorry, I tried my best to get through it in like 2 minutes.
That's right. We're really not very like stringent on the time limit. So I want to get to the end of super chats.
Yeah.
So from Sir Garnet, thanks very much for £5. This is a topic suggestion. I forgot to call for topic suggestions, so this is going to be the winning topic that we take forward to our next future streams, if there's no other last-minute super chats. Thoughts on the status of women in different societies and in the past, and whatever pros and cons they may have been. I'll have to think about that. I think he's talking about like different civilizations, like societies globally, and also looking back into the past. I'm going to look at all the comments from Sir Garnet following this up to just check that I'm understanding the question right. That's not for this show. That's bringing forward to future episodes of Women's Hour. So I'll bring that to the panel of Wamen to decide.
Yeah, I'm also not sure how to answer that question. By the way, it's a big question.
Yeah. We only tackle big questions. Apart from what is your favorite dinosaur, which is could be answered pretty quickly. All right. Before you go, I do want to, I wrote down a bunch of stuff to talk to you about, and I put women's. So the winning topic for last week was not about women's suffrage, but because it was a pretty big super chat, and because you're, I think you might give an interesting answer. I want to quickly run over, women getting the vote, but also maybe a little bit of democracy debate. What do you think? Women voting.
I repeal the 19th, but I also I don't believe in voting at all. So, or generally speaking, I don't believe in voting. We could maybe come to some kind of Heinleinian model or an Erich von Kunert-Lenin model where voting would be logical. But voting is a feel-good measure that only exacerbates and creates division across the population. It doesn't actually do anything. I'm against women voting because I'm against everybody voting, with the exception of maybe we can come up with some exceptions. If you have, again, Heinleinian model, service guarantees citizenship, landowners, and in Lenin's model, he also says people who have been able to pass a certain test. I always ask who makes the test.
Yeah.
So that's why I have a problem with that one. But the service guarantees citizenship and the landowner thing, because although that sounds like it's prioritizing the wealthy people, and it is, it's also who has skin in the game, who has a vested interest in this land that will not want to destroy it, most likely. So, yeah.
Yeah, well done. That's a very concise answer, and I agree with everything you said. I think democracy is all kind of, if you're going to have voting, it is kind of arbitrary, like where you draw the line to a certain extent. I think a lot of guys online they find some entertainment value in saying, oh, well, this is all because women got the vote, or women shouldn't be able to vote. Women are silly and not smart enough. And I think
men are silly too. They shouldn't vote either.
Well, exactly. I mean, most men didn't have the vote at the same. When women were awarded the vote in the UK. I don't know what the law was in America or Canada. Are you Canadian or American? Remind me.
I'm American. Yes.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to accuse you of being.
Oh, how
something
dare you accuse me of being from America's hat and impugn my honor.
Yeah, I think a lot of the guys who say women shouldn't have the vote are being a bit too smug, and that they need to be reminded that most men shouldn't have the vote either, under the same kind of logic as repeal the 19th, all that. So yeah, that's my start. That's basically everything you said. I agree with, and we do have a last minute super chat from DRT is King again. We may get another topic covered on Women's Hour. Good on you for picking the best dinosaur. I'm glad I got the right answer.
I didn't know. What was it called again? The plot?
Archaeopteryx.
Oh, right. Yeah, those are cool. Yeah, Archaeopteryx. Those are really cool.
Topic suggestion from DRT is King is: who should decide on the family's meal? The man or the men or the women? The family's meal? I mean, I hope that a family has more than one meal.
Right.
I guess it's like who decides what's for dinner. Okay, well, that's a topic suggestion for the future. And I think that is the highest paying super chat, so I'll bring that to the Council of Wamen and see how we're going to tackle that in the future. We do also have an outstanding request to talk about the film A Bothersome Man, which is, I hope we're going to tackle that next week. There was another there was a super chat that won last week that I will remind myself of that because we didn't tackle it. Oh no, was that it wasn't the voting one. Sorry. We're gonna have to tackle whatever was last week's winning super chat. That will be tackled next week, along with this one about the family's meal. We also had a random super chat about pets, I think. Oh, so Sir Garnet, he's matched the bid for for his topic suggestion. So we now have we're back to the first one, which I've asking about. What are we getting here? Yeah, status of women in different societies. So now we're back on top with that one, talking about different civilizations and different countries. So this is a last minute barrage of topics.
My only 2 points on that, I guess, is because I don't have the requisite current information in my brain to answer that, I think, probably fully succinctly or accurately. But what I would say is that the nonsense that, like, the idea that is now spread around by feminists that, like, Wamen once ruled the world and my Amazons, that is all complete ahistorical, silly buggers that should not be treated with any kind of seriousness whatsoever. That is, there were really no societies throughout history that were ruled entirely by women. And if you look at the histories of women who were in charge, you find a lot of the most extreme violence and murder that you can imagine. It does not to say that there have not been good female rulers. Catherine the Great of Russia is one of my favorite of all time. Catherine the Great was, I think, in my opinion, and this is an ahistorical opinion, but it is based on historical data, autistic, much like myself. Because this woman woke up at like 6 a.m. and just had an extremely rigid schedule she followed every single day. I think that woman might have actually had a touch of the tism, as they say. But that's why she worked, because she operated like a man. And when you find female rulers who are very successful and are very beloved, like Jadwiga of Poland, they operated and acted in a masculine way. They didn't have extremely again with the Elizabeth II as well, or Elizabeth I, excuse me, as well. Elizabeth II.
Yeah, she was very feminine.
Yeah, she was very feminine, but Elizabeth I, Queen Victoria, also you find more, and Elizabeth II actually in her early reign, very masculine behavior in terms of not being seen as overly emotional, of having themselves being removed from some of the more emotional aspects of it. And those rulers worked out great for their respective countries that I mentioned: Jadwiga, Catherine the Great, and Elizabeth and the First and Victoria. Case in point, Margaret Thatcher. Yeah,
that's
love her or hate her.
Controversial one.
Yeah,
maybe a topic on its own.
Right, the milk snatcher. Yes, love her or hate her on that one, but
Well, since you brought it up, and since we were chatting before the
Sure.
show about the female autism, which I'm often accused of, or should I say, I'm often diagnosed of in YouTube comments and tweets. I take it in a good spirit, because I know a lot of people use.
It's usually not meant as an insult anymore. I don't think.
No, I think people use autism very colloquially these days. It's like saying I've got a bit of OCD, or oh, I'm feeling so depressed. Or it's a medical word that people use to describe a certain kind of analytical brain, I think.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
I definitely relate to you in that sense, where when I look at YouTube, at what female YouTubers are doing, it seems that the people I put, even though you're doing it in a different way to me and much more successfully than I've been doing it, I put you in a sort of same tier as myself in terms of the kinds of topics you approach and the way you approach them.
Well, I don't have any. Most female YouTubers, and by the way, this is most YouTubers, but the vast majority of female YouTubers, if we're going to break them down by statistical deviation, are talking about hair, nails, beauty, gossip, other women,
books, TV shows.
Books, yes, media, not politics. Politics is a very masculine hobby, I guess. They're not talking about mathematics. Some of them talk about games, video games, but that's even less because it can
booby
be
streamers. You're talking about the.
I said not just booby streamers. I'm just talking about everybody, every woman on YouTube. I mean, they're just like I watch plenty of women who just talk about books, like you said, who just talk about books and things like that. And I like those YouTubers quite a lot, but that tends to be the. I don't watch makeup stuff. That doesn't interest me whatsoever. But that appears to be the. I think if you were to break it down, like by percentage, what every woman who has a YouTube channel that is, like let's say over, like even 1,000 subs, what are they doing? I'd say that like probably 85% are doing something related to beauty or food, beauty or food. It's gonna be those two, and then everything else is the other 15% is everything else. So.
I think that's why women who have YouTube channels talking about politics, especially if they're more right wing or libertarian, they get a lot of attention compared to the men who are producing work of similar quality. So that's not disparaging on you. I'm more talking about myself, but I really don't put as much effort into editing and audio and video and things like that as a lot of other male YouTubers who are not doing. Who don't have the kind of reach that I have, just because there's a certain novelty to it, and maybe even a certain kind of likability to just seeing a woman saying the same things that the men are saying.
I think men want to hear that they are reaffirmed, and women do too. By the way, women who might be too afraid to say anything, and then they're like, "Oh shit, I'm not alone." There's other girls who feel this way, and there is because women are less inherently involved. Look, again, politics is not inherently like kind of female oriented hobby. It's debate. It's aggressive oriented, which is like antithetical to the female kind of orientation of mindset, which is that we're trying to. It's not all women, but this is evolutionarily. Women are trying to placate. Women are trying to build bridges. Women are trying to reduce animus. Politics is let's get really goddamn mad at each other. It's kind of the way it works. So it's antithetical to a lot of the female psychological profile.
Well, I want to know about the beauty community.
Right.
On
Except
YouTube.
for that
They get pretty mad at each other too.
You do, but it's a different kind of thing, right? Because the beauty community is like in-group bickering. Politics is inter-group bickering. That seems to be the difference. I would hypothesize. I don't have a hardcore answer to that one. Yeah.
Have you heard Jordan Peterson or someone else say that the it's like 1 in 10 women are more masculine than the average man? If it, like that, those like normal curves like intersect in pretty substantial crossover.
The normal curves will intersect there at some point. So look, I don't totally buy into the soy boy hypothesis. There is some evidence for it, in that, look, there are phytoestrogens in the water. Alex Jones was only slightly incorrect. By the way, I'm saying this because the data have have heard him out. The chemicals in the water were not turning the frogs gay. They were turning the frogs transgender. They made the frogs, because frogs have a very weird reproductive systems compared to.
I've read Jurassic Park.
Yeah. So yes, exactly. It really, that was the problem, is that it was making the frogs change from male to female. So, and these phytoestrogens, do you want to know why they're in the water? Because women flush they pee out and or flush their hormonal birth control down the toilet. You cannot filter through that through existing filtration systems, at least not with that, making it extremely expensive. So women are just flushing female hormones into the water supply, and men are drinking it and have been for years. Well, why do you think that we have an abundance of soy boys? Men are inherently being exposed to more estrogens than they ever have been in the entire history of the human species.
Okay. I mean, I always thought it was just our comfortable lifestyles that no longer, sort of cultivated that sort of, heavy labor that manual labor. I mean,
there's that too, but I had to throw in the Alex Jones frog conspiracy.
No, I love it.
Is that the case? True.
Yeah. Do all countries use the same sort of filtration systems and have the same sort of effects? Do you know? Like, there's no countries where they boil all their water and break down all of the hormones in them.
The the chemical structure is so complex and so small that you would have to go through filtration effects that do not exist in any public filtration system in the entire world that would be able to get rid of the female hormones that exist in public water supplies.
Someone told me that the cattle get injected with a lot of hormones too, and that ends up in the meat. Have you heard that? Yeah,
they do. The water supply is the big issue. And there's other things that men should be aware of, things like seed oils. I'm not trying to, I know that I'm sounding like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat right now, but avoid seed oils, probably, because it causes problems with fat distribution and muscle growth and things like that. So avoid seed oils, avoid public tap water, probably any water that is drawn from public tap. You might even be better to drink soda in a weird way, but if the soda includes water that's drawn from public tap, then still has the phytoestrogens in it.
I'm going to go, I've been on board with everything you said so far, Aydin, but I'm going to go ahead and put a huge disclaimer on this and say I do not endorse anything you said. I think... about food. It seems like food and nutrition is such a massive minefield of misinformation.
And please, and Mommy Susan, no, I don't know. I have no clue. I'm just a stupid fucking moron. Guess what? I have no idea what I'm saying, Mommy Susan. I swear I have no idea. I've never read any studies on this at all. I swear to God, I certainly haven't read any data on this for sure. I have.
I'm married to an extremely analytically minded, strong, tall man who drinks tap water and eats McDonald's. So I don't. It seems to me that it's quite possible to eat what I consider like a normal diet, without limiting yourself in these ways and still being very healthy.
Please let me just to put my final statement on that. Do not take the things that I said and go, oh my God, I can't drink tap water anymore. I have to be afraid of public food. No. It's that there is an increased amount of estrogen in everything because you can't really get rid of it because it's reprocessed and it literally comes out of women's pee-pee. I'm not joking. That part is real. You're not going to become a woman and grow titties.
You're drinking women's pee. That's what we should be. That should be the headline of this.
That is the headline. You are drinking women's pee. Whether you're eating a burrito at McDonald's or a hamburger at McDonald's or you're drinking tap water, you're drinking woman's pee at some level. And it does contain some estrogens in it and whatever. I don't know. I don't really know what the ultimate outcome of this is. And we won't know probably for another 100 years. I'll be long dead by then. So good luck, next generation of femboys, I guess.
Well, I think... Coming back to what my initial question was about women who are masculine or men, I think there is this component of masculinity that is being the sort of analytically minded, object-oriented, what you might call just nerdy kind of brain. And coming back to what you and I are doing on YouTube, and let's just use you as an example. I think you're probably more analytically minded than even the like 90th percentile man. Like you're on, like you're in that tier where you're not just more analytically minded than the average man. It's also just like most men.
Well,
That makes
it's
sense.
yeah. I mean, autism is my superpower or whatever. I guess they say that or something. No, I just like math. I like numbers. I don't like feelings. I feel very very uncomfortable. Like, look, I can cry. Trust me, I have, and I certainly can cry. But I feel very very uncomfortable when someone I don't know very well cries around me. That's why that video about Diana's death and the death of public figures made me so upset because I was sitting there crying because I do have that strong still female. It's a natural part of being a female, by the way, is high empathy towards other people's emotions that men don't necessarily experience. Some men do, but not all. Um, the high analytical stuff, though, is look, it's not like a fun position to be in. It's people will get very upset with you. It's like, why aren't you crying at this? Why aren't you upset about this? You still have emotions. Obviously, you have anger and rage and frustration and sadness and caring. All these emotions you do have, but autism kind of puts a weird like. I don't. Again, it's not that autism is a superpower. It's just that I have a slightly more, I would say, male oriented or dominated brain. In that I'm just like, well, yeah, but why? But why? Can you show me data? But why? Which is like a total childish way of thinking too. Yeah, but why? Do your kids do that too? Why?
Yeah, they've just my older daughter. She's 3. She's just started doing the Y thing. But she goes butt way as well. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, put your
Sky's
shoes
blue.
on.
Why?
Why?
Oh my
But
god.
why?
Yeah.
Let's have a conversation about it for 10 minutes before I do it.
But why?
You're still gonna do it though.
You're gonna do it. So the but why question is, I think, I don't have a lot of faith in the Myers-Briggs personality inventory. That I don't think that's a very good indicator. But for me, I'm an INTJ, which is the architect type, which is the but why paradigm of
Why
yeah,
should I
but
care?
why?
Or like,
Yeah, but why? Oh, here's the thing. But how and why? And let's study it. Which can, by the way, much of dictators have been described as INTJ. I'm not a dictator. I'm a very emotional person. I get very upset when I think that someone is being mistreated. Moment, I suppose. But at the same time, it's just like, yeah, but why? If that makes
yeah.
sense.
I think you should come back to the when kids do it. I always imagine they're just doing. You ever played Mass Effect, where you get
Oh,
like
yeah.
or one of those games where you
Yeah.
have like a chat tree where you can go through like the questions. It's
Tell
like,
me more.
tell me more. It's just like, so like I just imagine her with like the circle coming up and like, tell me more. It just says like,
Yeah.
but that's what she's doing. It's like, it's not. She doesn't want to know
Aw.
why. She just wants you to keep talking about it.
Why do I have to wear shoes? This is my favorite shop on the Citadel. Like that. Basically, right?
Oh, okay. We're gonna have to talk about video games again sometime. I keep
Oh,
wanting
yeah.
to talk to someone, have a woman on to talk about video games because I think maybe we'll actually schedule this in for some time because I heard recently that if you want to make a man like not just be attracted to you but actually have an emotional attachment like to fall in love with you, the best thing a woman can do is to help him with something he likes doing or that he's trying to do.
Yeah.
Which makes him like it bonds men together, but it also bonds men to women.
Yes, very much.
So I
mean,
think playing
consider-
video games together might actually be a really good way to bond with the man in your life. So I want to.
Only if you actually enjoy playing the video
Oh yeah,
game.
yeah.
You
Oh,
can't force yourself.
definitely.
I mean, this would be my last point, I guess, on this is that when this stuff started popping up, like all this culture war crap, like back in the late 2010s and early the late 2000s, excuse me, and early 2010s. I remember I went to a comic book shop and there was a guy there who like quizzed me like, oh yeah, who's your favorite inker? I'm like, what do you mean my favorite inker? I can tell you my favorite author. I can tell or 8 authors that I like. I can tell you artists that I like. My favorite inkers are chosen basically based on like, do you have a free time to ink this comic book? And there was that kind of exclusionary behavior that was involved in that. And I now think that that's a good thing. Not to that degree, but the exclusionary behavior of keeping people out of hobbies who are not actually interested in the hobbies is important because you do end up finding there's a old meme of how a hobby dies. And at first it's like one person, he comes up with the hobby. And then it's like he shares it with his friend. And they like it. And they share it with their friends. And they're all having a good time. And then a normie comes in. And the normie doesn't really care to learn the rules. Well, first the normie comes in. The normie doesn't care to learn the rules. Then the woman comes in. And all the guys get distracted by the woman. And they don't. Now it's not about the hobby. She's like, I want to make all these. Normie wants to make changes because he doesn't understand it. The woman wants to make even more changes because she doesn't understand it. And that tends to be the death of hobbies. And I've watched all of my favorite hobbies basically die. Comic books, that's why I have the I'm Not Daredevil, which, by the way, is a Mark Waid book. It's the reference in Mark Waid is a total SJW. But in comic books, video games, tabletop games, everything has been subsumed into, if only we could appeal to the women who don't really want to play it except for to play it for male attention, which is a problem.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It seems like the chat agrees with you and thinks this is a bad topic, but I still think that some of the best times I've had in my marriage have been playing video games with my husband. So because I genuinely, like playing. I like him and I like playing games, and yeah, he gets me into the games that he likes. So maybe we will, maybe we won't, and maybe you'll come on for that one. We'll see.
Sure,
if we can fit you in the schedule.
This has been really fun. Again, sorry for keeping you
great.
longer than an hour.
No, it's fine. We often go longer an hour these days, but. Let's leave it there, and I hope we'll bring you back again. We'll be covering super chats. I'll have to go back and actually make a note of all the super chats we got and who was the winner there, because we got a few more bit more bidding war going on in the comment section while we were chatting. So I'll figure out who won. I'll figure out who won last week, and we'll see you again next week. Tomorrow, sorry, I always forgot. Tomorrow I have another live stream. It's going to be a bonus. Not with a woman, but with a man. We're going to have the men's hour with. we're having writers' hour. So I've got an author on who wrote a novel, which he very kindly sent to me, and I read it. And he wanted to just have a chat. So we're going to be talking about the novel. We're going to talk about what it's like writing. I've written a novel. He's read my novel. So we're just going to have a little sort of writers' chat, completely different to what I normally do. Not about politics. Just talking about writing. What it's like to write books, and we're talking about each other's books. So turn up for that tomorrow at 9. And thanks again, Aydin, for coming on. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Thanks for having me. And sorry if I talk too fast or talk too much. I was trying to get through stuff quickly.
No, I love it. Brilliant. And have a good weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.